Okay, hello everyone. I am joined here today by my excellent friend, Dr. AP Canavan. Hello, AP, how are you?
I am doing very well, Philip. And I see in the background the festive lights have gone up.
Yep.
I've gone a little less sort of extravagant
Yeah,
in
it's
in
subtle,
mine,
very subtle,
but
very tasteful, very
but
tasteful.
there is a little Nomi Christmas tree,
Oh, that's cute. Very nice. Well, season's greetings to you, my friend.
and to you and of course to your family.
Thank
So
you.
today we're talking Wheel of Time,
Yeah.
episode 5.
Yes. Episode 5. Yeah.
Now obviously I had gripes about episodes 1 to 3,
Yep.
but we framed that very much as, but this was setting up the foundation for everything. And in fact, when you think about it, it was very much like an extended prologue. It was an extended pilot episode that was covering all these things to get the stuff set up. And then both you and I really quite liked episode 4. We still, as grumpy old men, had the little things that were, well, I'm not entirely, because
Well, that
that's
was
just,
mostly you, actually.
well, okay, yeah, well, I'm a grumpy old man. But what I wanted to say is episode 5 really sold me on the show. Like, I am actually, for someone, and it's now fairly well known, I am not the world's greatest Wheel of Time fan. But
Right.
despite this, I really, really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
We've gone from a lot of moving so quickly through a lot of narrative events and not having time to deeply invest in characters, to in episode 4 it slowed down a little bit and was focusing more on character moments, and those things suddenly I was finding I was much more interested and invested in what was going on.
Yeah.
It was developing my interest and intrigue in the story. And
Yeah.
is it an absolutely faithful adaptation? No.
Oh,
But
thank goodness.
that's the
Not.
whole
Yeah.
that's the whole point of an adaptation. An adaptation does something different with the material,
If it's
because you
going to be
can't
any
just put,
good, it has to.
yeah,
It has to. Yeah.
because you can't just put the page onto the screen. It doesn't work. Aspects of pacing completely change with the medium.
Yeah.
The fact that internal monologues, you how are you going to do that? We talked in relation to the film adaptation of Dune, that
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Like lots and lots of voiceover, and a lot of it is designing scenes that show the underlying element of what the narrative is telling you in the book, is
Hmm.
showing you this on the screen, illustrating it in a way that we can start picking up on it. And the Wheel of Time began in the early 90s.
Right.
We're not in the early 90s anymore. Times have changed, audiences have changed, things have moved on a bit. So it's updated some of the sensibilities to be,
Yeah.
slightly more modern and more engaging. And I will say this, if you are one of those people who are really annoyed and upset at changes that they have made to aspects of the narrative, the
Hmm.
books are still there. No one can take the books away. You can still deeply invest in the books. The TV show might not be your thing. But I went back and I rewatched a couple of episodes of Legend of the Seeker.
Ah,
And if you think the Wheel of Time adaptation is a bad adaptation of a set of books, go back and watch any of the episodes of Legend of the Seeker, the TV adaptation of the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind,
right. Right.
and then rewatch the Wheel of Time adaptation, and I think you will be stunned at how close this
Hmm.
show is actually following the
Yeah.
major elements of the story,
Hmm.
not necessarily the mapping it to the superficial narrative events, but the major elements that are being explored in the story, the subtext, the theme, deeper elements of characterization.
Hmm.
And I wanted to get that out of the way, because there still is in some quarters, I think, a lot of negativity about this show, and complaints about, oh, but it looks cheap. And you go, it doesn't look cheap.
Hmm.
Go and look at Sword of Truth.
Yeah.
Seriously, go
Legend of the Seeker. Yeah. Yeah.
pause this video now, do a search, and go and have a look at those things. And again, that wasn't the fault of the actors or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
It was more, that was the style of production. And the Wheel of Time TV adaptation might not be to your taste. Absolutely fine. No one can gainsay that, because it's about how you feel about it.
Right.
But really, it's not because it's cheap. It's not because it's badly written. It's not because it's badly acted. It's not conforming to your expectations, maybe, or you don't like the direction of the adaptation.
Right.
Fine. But it's not because it's been badly done.
Yeah, and another thing I think I agree with everything you just said. And another thing I would just add to that is no one is going to be able to put your vision of that book on a screen. That's your vision, right? Sorry, AP. I'm sorry. Yep.
They can't reach into my brain and put my
No.
vision on the screen, and then reach into your brain and put your vision of the books on the screen as well at the same time, because clearly they're going to be identical.
Exactly. Right. So, and that's, I think people kind of forget that. So as somebody who enjoys watching adaptations of certain beloved books for me, it's like Lord of the Rings or Dune or others, I don't expect them to have exactly what I have in here up on that screen. As long as they are faithful to what I consider to be some of the major themes of the story, to the heart of it, the experience of it, then I think it's fine to make changes to things. And if visually it doesn't actually match up, and it never will, that's okay. I'm looking at someone else's vision, and I can enjoy someone else's vision of that story. So I have no problems with that personally. And I'm sorry for fans, real big fans of the books, who are disappointed with the show. And that's probably too bad, because I'm sure they were looking forward to it. But maybe it would help just to kind of approach it as this is not the same story. It's not the same story. It's in a different medium. It cannot be the same story, and it can never be what's in here. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. And this is going to be pretty positive. We're going to have a lot of positives, just spoilers. We're going to have a lot of positives here about episode 5. And maybe it's some tiny niggles at the end, but really.
No, hang on. You know what? Let's do one. I'll do one little tiny thing that kind of annoyed me.
Okay.
Because I am going to be overwhelmingly positive about a lot of this, because I really was quite impressed.
Yeah.
But let's do that. I'll do a tiny little thing that I want to complain about. You can do a tiny little one that you want to complain about.
Okay.
Then we'll do the positive stuff, right?
Fair enough. We'll do tiny niggles first. All right.
So, that overhead shot of the burial at the start, where they had this quite powerful emotional scene of post-battle, and I liked how enemy soldiers were being laid to rest as well.
Yes, even the king. Yeah.
I've seen puppies dig deeper holes in the back garden, but not only that, they had to count. If you actually think of the logistics of trying to create that, someone had to count the number of dead bodies they had, then design 2 different circles with a gap in the middle to make sure that they all sort of lined up that way.
Yeah.
Then they obviously had to get out some twine and some markers to sit and mark out where on those circles these bodies are going to fall, and measure it all out, and then dig the shallowest graves in the entire world. There's a film starring Ewan McGregor, and I think it must have been in the very early 90s, called like Shallow Grave, where even that was deeper than these things. And this is one of those ones. It was a beautiful sort of cinematic shot, and then as soon as you thought about it, you went, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Exactly.
And when I talk about Discovery on the usual occasional times that I do, I try to suggest like a minute change, to change as little as possible about a scene, so that they can still use it, but you can then make it make sense.
Right.
And the one suggestion I would have had here is for the Aes Sedai, once they were all lined up like that and they'd done all of this, that there would have been a small moment of magic, and it all would have filled in with fire, and they would have had a giant pyre from that. But I looked at it and I went, oh, come on. They really measured all of that out.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And the scene is visually, it's aesthetically really quite nice, and it's stunning actually. And then there's the mourning and the singing, and you can feel the raw emotion of it, and it's well done in every respect, except it would never, I guess if we just approach it as an entirely aesthetic statement, then we can just sit back and, all right, we don't have to think about how animals would come along and eat those bodies as soon as they turn their backs, because those graves are so shallow. But they put candles on them, they had the little shrouds, and so it was visually stunning. And I loved how also, I'm going to say the word Beowulf here, because this episode starts with a funeral and ends with a funeral, which is, I love the cyclicality of that, the tie-in.
Yeah.
So I like the aesthetic choice and the thematic choice but the shallow graves, yeah, it's not a practical presentation whatsoever. Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I just rolled with that, so that was okay. Yeah.
But and this is the reason I describe it as one of those little things that you just sort of go, did it ruin my appreciation of the episode? No. But I did have that moment of looking at it and go,
they weren't even below the surface. Yeah.
But that was the thing, was the emotion of the scene was there. The fact that they were honoring the dead of both sides, because it wasn't about good guys and bad guys. It's like, this was a conflict. And the Aes Sedai represent basically all people, and they're trying to do what they think is right.
Yeah.
Obviously, Logian's army believed that they were rescuing him, so it was opposite sides of a conflict, not good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
So I really, at the end, it reflected that sort of tone that is running underneath all of this. That this is about the entirety of the world, not just a single. You see that sort of attention to theme and subtext running through scenes. You have to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Even if in practical terms you go, that's not quite right. You go, it's not a. This is a story. It is a narrative. There are going to be deviations from realism. They have magic. It's not quite the same. And when I do get annoyed when things don't match up in the world. And someone had pointed this out in a comment, saying that in the battle sequence, these Aes Sedai didn't have proper patrols. The battle happened, they were caught unawares, and yet, even though they're so powerful, they lost this battle to a ragtag band of poorly armed, poorly organized soldiers. Like they suffered losses that they shouldn't have lost, and it doesn't seem to make sense. But at the end of the day, it still was, for some people, an exciting battle sequence, and it was trying to communicate that, and things can happen in battle. And does it absolutely ruin my immersion? Battle sequences are hard to do in a TV show. They just are. And it got across a sense of what it was. This is not... TV shows don't have the budget of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and my nitpicks are similar in nature. There's nothing that would break the show for me. I have a couple, but you could talk about the visuals, the CGI occasionally being a little obvious, like with Tarvel, the White Tower just seemed like it was a poster in the background or something. But
you had a problem with the mighty erection of the White Tower.
But it's a matriarchal thing, isn't it? So I don't know. That's the statement.
But the giant cylindrical tower, and then the two smaller towers on either side of it.
Oh dear.
You have a problem with that thrusting up into the sky in the background?
Dear me. Well, just let's say visually it was not entirely convincing to me. But again, look, I don't know what big budget is these days, or I don't have a sophisticated enough understanding of CGI to know how hard it is to give something that feels realistic, but to me, it did not feel realistic. And there were other things like that, but there was also if you're just going to turn in terms of storytelling, very tiny nitpick, really, but when Egwene and Perrin are captured by the White Cloaks, and ultimately they get away. And there's this moment when the Valda, who is like the most sadistic monster in the whole story so far, is cutting Perrin's back and trying to get Egwene to, do some channeling so he can cut her hands off and all that. Then Egwene cleverly frees Perrin by burning his ropes, and he's freed. And then Valda is facing Egwene, and Perrin sort of gets up and roars, and his eyes change color. And Valda suddenly just like, it's like he wet his pants, and he drops the knife that he had and says, "Light, save me." And just that moment didn't feel entirely convincing to me, to have, maybe if visually they had done more with Perrin there, instead of just having have like, magic contact lenses or something. I thought maybe it could have been more convincing, that this guy who had every advantage, he had all kinds of people around him, and he had a knife. Why would you drop the knife, and when you're seeing somebody whose eyes are changing color? So I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't feel, the action sequences haven't been the most compelling part of the show so far for me, which is, they're hard to do. They're hard to do well and convincingly. So
I basically agree with you about that scene with Valda, but I can suggest one of the ways that maybe the showrunners intended it to be. And even if we didn't believe that version, if we didn't find what they were trying to do, if we don't buy into their intentionality, that's one thing. But I think they actually had a rationale, and the rationale makes sense. And that's, they're setting Valda up very much to be a bully.
And a coward.
And a bully and a coward. Because when he has the power, that's when he's Captain Big Balls, walking around and strutting his stuff.
Yeah.
But when he's actually faced where he is being threatened.
Right.
And that's, it reveals the cowardly nature of what he does. He hunts down and kills women. He doesn't do the donkey work. Everyone else does that. He has an entire pack of men going and exerting his will. And then once they're subdued, once they're tied down, once they have no power, that's when he comes in and pretends to be the big man. And here we see a lot of that he goes from this very menacing figure, but when suddenly he's confronted with something that he's, oh, hang on a sec. Where's everyone to back me up? We see his true colors, because he presents as, oh, I have this belief in the light. We're all children, or we're all important in the light, or whatever it was, to try and justify torturing a young girl that he knows is not an Aes Sedai.
So they set it up earlier. They did set it up earlier by, there was a scene in one of the first 3 episodes where he and other White Cloaks encounter Moiraine and her party, and that Moiraine reports that there are Trollocs, and the leader of the White Cloaks is like, well, we better go fight them. And then Balda's like, oh, I actually think I have to go the other way, So they set him up as a coward. I get that, but I just didn't find the scare as scary as it was supposed to be, I guess.
And I think possibly that's, Perrin having the golden eyes, very book appropriate. And yet some people may be aware there was a film version of the book's Twilight, where they had the same eye effect. It's not really scary. And whatever way the action was blocked there and the whole sequencing of it, Perrin kind of comes lumbering up, and you go, I've seen The Walking Dead, I've seen zombie movies. They're scarier than, oh, I'm gonna get you.
It wasn't choreographed that well.
And because that aspect felt a little awkward, because Valda suddenly goes from being, very, very confident, that the transition was well acted, like he's
a good actor. He's actually a very fine actor.
It didn't sell his card as being the thing. It just seemed that he suddenly was scared and you go, but why? It's some lumbering guy who has a bad back. And then you even have Egwene in the background. You'd seen her burn Perrin's cuff, which was like a brilliant, wonderful sequence of her throwing the little tiny fireball
Yeah.
and looking down, and that was so wonderfully done. But she
Yeah.
suddenly jumps up and stabs him in the back because they didn't show a shot of her as soon as he's distracted, looking down and setting fire to her own bonds. She
Yeah.
just jumps up, and you go, "What happened to the ropes?" But
Yeah.
and again, let's think about it. Did we think, was it a 1 out of 10 performance, an absolutely terrible scene
No,
that
no.
ruined it? No, you go, no, it just wasn't brilliant. It wasn't,
Right.
particularly
It
good.
didn't
But
break the show. And, just one more, since we're on the nitpicks, let's just get them done. One more nitpick from me. And then I really want to focus because this is a great show. I really enjoyed this episode tremendously. So, my one last nitpick is this. I would love for the people, the extras and the actors as well, to roll in the mud for a while and get a little dirty, because everybody in Tar Valon uses the same laundry detergent as the White Cloaks. Everybody looks so clean and neat, and the whole place looks like a set because it's so clean and neat. There are oxen and there are horses. There should be poop in the streets. There should be mud. People shouldn't be so pristine. That for me is becoming a little bit of a. It does boot me out a little bit because I want this world to be, a little more convincing. Would it
lived
be
it.
so hard for them to roll in the mud a little bit, And the only dirty people in all of Tar Valon were Matt and Rand, and especially Matt. I mean, he looked really, because they're showing his state of mind. I think too, because of how he looks all smudged and everything. But other than that, everybody was so neat.
And that's, we do have this, and again, because it's a TV show and they want, if you think of a lot of the other fantasy shows, it's like, look at the peasants, and the peasants are all in brown and gray and it's very gritty and dark. Like, we're not doing that, we're making it brighter. And then
Right.
you can look at other things where they've gone super technical or almost hyper saturated in color, and you go,
Yeah.
it's now looking a bit cartoonish. And the Lord of the Rings, obviously the Jackson adaptation, did it really
Yeah.
well in that you could still have some bright colors, you could still have really exquisite costuming. But a big thing that they did, and The Witcher does it as well,
Hmm.
is the wear on things.
Yes,
That
that's what I mean.
when you see people walking around in the background and it looks like they're wearing new clothes.
Brand new clothes. Yeah.
And I know the White Cloaks, like they have the scene where they are scrubbing Egwene. It's this
Yeah.
almost OCD obsession with
Almost.
cleanliness and purity. You go,
Yeah.
oh, and that's why they wear white, and they should be white all the time. You go,
Right.
it's still, they're still meant to be walking at the bottom of their cloaks should still have mud on it. That
Yeah.
at the end of the day, maybe they go, oh, well, we need to set up camp at 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day because it's going to take 6 hours of laundry. What do they wear while they're getting the laundry done?
Yeah.
It's and we said this about the Aes Sedai, that the color coding is
Yeah.
too much. There are ways that you can work in the red Aja having red in their costuming without all of their costuming being red.
Yeah.
And that, again, but it is such a minor thing.
Yeah. These are not show breakers at all. And from now on, we're only allowed to say positive things. So unless you have any other little nitpicks to get out of the way before we move on to the positives.
No, I actually think, oh, no, I do have
Okay.
one.
Okay.
I can't let it go without this.
Okay.
Right. You remember when we saw the White Cloaks? The White Cloaks are moving with impunity through everyone's lands. And they've made a big deal about the fact that Volda has been killing all of these Aes Sedai and hunting them down.
Right.
And clearly the Aes Sedai are allowed to fight back. The one thing I absolutely hated is, okay, so when it's one Aes Sedai or two Aes Sedai out in the middle of nowhere and the White Cloaks spring on them, you go, all right, I can imagine that happening.
Yeah.
You can see the Tar of Tar Valon in the back. Sorry, Tar Valon, I think they pronounce it.
Okay.
In the background, when they accost Perrin and Nynaeve, and you go, this isn't that the White Cloaks are out in the middle of nowhere. They are literally on the doorstep of hundreds of Aes Sedai, and they're going to try and take an Aes Sedai prisoner.
Right.
And that's the one that I went, if they hadn't had the tar in the background,
Yeah.
I would have believed that a bit more. But the fact that the White Cloaks are acting with absolute impunity there,
Yeah.
that, and I know in the books later on, this becomes a bone of contention because the White Cloaks become even more powerful. But
Yeah.
at this point in time, it seems very early to be bringing in that, yeah, they just kidnap Aes. Why don't they just wander into Tar Valon and kill Aes Sedai? They are that close to the Tar. You can see it in the background.
Yeah. Huh.
That's and with then Valda being meant to be a card,
Right.
that's why I'm sort of going,
Would he get
but
that
he's
close?
so
Yeah. Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Like all it would need is two warders to go, hang on a sec, and you would have a bunch of reds even turn up to go, you're murdering people on our land. This is a city state that we own,
Yeah.
and wiping them out.
Yeah. I don't think they would even start with dialogue. So yeah, that's a
But
fair point. Fair point. But
but it was a tiny thing, and again,
yeah.
it was just because you could see it in the background, and when you start thinking about it, you go, maybe it's too close. But I know why they did it. They did it because they're trying to show all of these plot threads that had diverged are
Yeah.
coming together now in this moment. And
Yeah.
it's actually it's a nice way to circumvent the fact that there was months of traveling of a lot of very minor events in the books. And
Yes.
yes, they were interesting in the books, but they were minor events. They slowly built up character, but because of how they've gone through a lot of these things, we've actually been given almost all of that sort of information about each one of them. We know
Mm.
who Tom Maryland is because we've seen a lot of that, even though, you know, he's slightly darker and more serious, the book version, but we
Yeah.
get a general sense of his caring for the boys. Rand and Mat, we've seen Mat's descent into darkness, and
Yeah.
instead of it being this, they've used small moments to show that, instead of let's have a whole scene where people are on a boat for a while and then Rand and Mat go juggling, and let's have another couple of songs in another town where they're going to juggle again and do they skipped all of that, but have still communicated a lot of that information, and it's
Yeah.
always a balance.
They
It's
have
always a
to. They
balance.
have to for a show. They have to. Yeah. So.
So
All
I
right.
get all that. I actually quite like a lot of that. That time skip forward, it tells us that time's moving on, that Tar Valon isn't just next door to the two rivers, that
Sure.
time's passed.
Yeah.
And it's communicate these things. So I was happy enough with that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. So let's keep rolling with the positives here. I'll give a little example, and then I'll let you give an example. And I think I know which one you're going to go with. So I will avoid that one, and we can talk about that one because that is a major one for me as well. But let me give a smaller one first. So there was some great acting in this episode, in episode 5. Just fantastic acting. I thought that Steppen was a standout, and Nynaeve and Lan, and really, I mean, there was nobody in this episode that I thought, oh, that's not very good. Everybody did a fantastic job. There was a lot of positives there in terms of the acting. One scene that I thought was really brilliant, and it was totally made up for the show. So after they get back to the tower, and Steppen has put his Aes Sedai's ring in the bit of a Lord of the Rings moment there, where it melts into the hot, looks like lava, but whatever. Okay,
Gold.
whatever.
It's gold. It's molten gold, where
Molten gold.
apparently they're casting all of the rings from, you know, because one
Yeah.
ring to rule them all.
Yeah. So anyway, that's fine. I mean, that's all good. We get a lot of presentations of Steppen's grief, which I thought was really, the actor does a tremendous job with that. And I'm so glad that they chose to emphasize this, because it gives us a lot of understanding of warders and the relationship with Aes Sedai. And so there's storytelling, there's important storytelling going on, not just great acting, important storytelling. Even though he's not a main character, even though he dies in this episode, it's what they do with him is very important. But what I loved, one thing that I loved that they did after that scene where he puts the ring on to melt, they show Lan coming into a room where Moiraine is obviously sitting in grief, thinking about the loss of her friend. And there's not a word spoken, but you can tell when Lan goes and he leans down and he takes her hand, and you can tell that he is thinking, what if this were me? What if I lost my Aes Sedai? How would I feel? Because there was a moment earlier when Stepin had said, you lose Moraine, you tell me how easy it'll be to jump to another woman, and Lan was sort of like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then, so after that scene, when he goes to that room alone, not a word spoken, just the look that he gives her and the exchange of looks there, I thought was so powerful, just to show us the bond between these two. And they're doing some great storytelling as well. I just thought it was a brilliant scene, really wonderful insertion in there.
And one of the reasons why I think actually the entire storyline with Stepin is so important that you picked up, or that you were just talking about there, is because for people who haven't read the books, you go, oh, the warders and the Aes Sedai have a special bond; they can feel things. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
In order to communicate the depth of the warder Aes Sedai bond,
Yep.
they've had moments like every time when Lan said, when I had a drink, you always get emotional.
Yeah.
They've shown the loving or the sexual relationship between some Aes Sedai and their warders. They've shown the platonic relationship between Moraine and Lan. They've shown the Reds not having any warders.
Right.
They've shown the importance of the warders to aspects of the Aes Sedai. They've shown these things. But to try and get someone who hasn't read the books to understand what that bond actually entails, the depth of it.
Yeah.
I think the Stepin storyline was actually really, really important.
It was
and
brilliant.
people go, oh, but it was made up just for the show and he's not a major character and blah, blah, blah. You go, well, okay, what warder that is named in the books could they have done this with to illustrate the depth of the bond and kill off now?
Right.
They needed something for non-book readers to actively be able to watch and understand the depth of this. And Stepin's grief and the exploration of that from the different perspectives, including Stepin's own, I think was absolutely essential to this. And actually, just to follow on, I thought you were going to mention the scene where Lan and Stepin, where like Lan is obviously doing the suicide watch.
Yep.
Because Stepin is in grief. And we've seen just shortly before that Stepin going, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping, because he's talking to Nynaeve. Can I have some more of the tea that'll make me sleep? But in the same conversation, he says he doesn't want to sleep. And Nynaeve does not pick up on it.
Yeah.
The famed wisdom is so distracted by the other things that are going on because of her worries and stresses about her friends, about being in the tower, about her distrust of the Aes Sedai. Doesn't pick up on the fact that someone has said, I need something to help me sleep. I don't want to sleep.
I don't want to forget.
And hasn't noticed the contradiction. And I thought that was so wonderfully done. Because when I was watching it, I went, that's odd. Why is he asking for something to help him sleep when he doesn't want to sleep? That it seems like a really poor line that they've worked in. And then I see him handing Lan the teacup, and I went, oh, this is not going to work out well, is it?
No.
Because just seeing that, and I was actually, when I was watching it, and I was enthralled by their discussion, but I kept watching to see if Stepin would take a sip, and he doesn't.
No. And it's amazing, because we're going to talk about this scene as well, but at the funeral scene, Stepin's funeral, you can see so much good acting going on in that scene, but Nynaeve's face. And she's obviously being affected by Lan's grief, but you can also conjecture that maybe she's thinking, oh, I should not have given him that tea, but there was such a great moment there. That ending was so powerful to me.
So before we talk about that scene, because that is a scene that I think is stunningly well done. And
I agree.
I have a couple of points that I want to make about it. But before we get there, that conversation between Lan and Stepin, when Stepin is talking about, being bonded with Alanna, and then, maybe he's going to have to sleep with the other warders because they have a very sexual relationship.
Yeah.
And he said, I've never slept with a man. And Lan just sort of like, two men.
Yeah.
And you can see it's that the ease of which they make that joke, because Lan is trying to comfort him and he's trying to take his mind off things. And it's the way that when you are sitting with someone deep in grief, that you have that I'm not going to just bawl my eyes out the whole time. I'm going to crack a few jokes. It's the joking in the dark, joking at the darkness,
Yeah.
trying to bring that in, and you can see their friendship. And it's not about Stepan going, oh well, I'm just going to go and do this. It's
Right.
it's the joke about it, because that's not who Stepan is. He isn't going to be sleeping with them. They're joking about it the way that close old friends do.
Yeah.
And because they've worked into the fact that this is a world in which polyamory, homosexual and heterosexual things happen, and no one really cares as long as you're not hurting someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're not constantly calling attention to it.
No.
They're just
Yeah.
it's part of the world. It's not a focus of the story going, and now children, we're going to tell you that this is, it's not didactic. It's just,
Yeah.
relax, this is the world. And because it's such a normal part of the world, it's the same thing, that we will have the same joking attitude about these things at various moments that we do about any other element. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like showing that depth of friendship, showing that ease between them.
Yeah, that was lovely.
show-
The line that Lan has when he says, "You're assuming they would want you," and he says, "What's not to want?" You know.
And it was such a perfect thing of the two people just trying. I don't know if you've ever experienced this at funerals and things like that. That one of the traditions that we have, quite often when you meet up, and you'll have people crying and being very, very upset at their loss.
Yeah.
And about 30 seconds later, they'll be keeled over laughing because someone will be telling a joke about what the person did.
Yeah.
And you move between those extremes. 1 minute you're laughing, 1 minute you're crying. And it's a celebration of life and a recognition of loss.
Yes.
And it is such a natural part of mourning here to have that.
Yeah.
Because you loved the person that died.
Yeah.
And you want to remember the good things.
Yeah.
And you want to feel the grief, because it's part and parcel of why you've come together for this. And this leads me on to talk about that ending scene.
Yeah, let's talk about that ending scene, which we both agree is brilliant, beautifully done, huge highlight for the series for me.
And so, as you said at the beginning, the episode is bookended by funerals, and they are very, very different. When you look at the funeral at the start, it is very formal.
Yeah.
It is very restrained. And even though we see the shots of Alana and Chus, you can see that they are grieving. Yeah. But that's one thing. What we see at the end, if you look, it's almost all entirely warders, with about 4 exceptions, because there's Moiraine, Nynaeve, I think Alana is there, and I think there's one other Aes Sedai. That's it. This isn't a grand open, all the Aes Sedai are there. This is such a private ceremony. This is family only. Mm-hmm. This isn't public.
Yeah.
This is just, we are family. All the warders are brothers, in the same way that all the Aes Sedai are sisters.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really loved about this, so it's a very private family ceremony. No outsiders apart from those 1 or 2 that we let in. Mm-hmm. Warders in this, we have seen, are actually, and Lan himself, very, very stoic. And you get the senior warder, or the senior warder in the room, says to Lan, you put your hand on him. Yeah. Because so this reminds me very much of the ancient Rome thing of professional mourners. The way I read this scene was Lan, and I'm going to use the word channeling here, and I don't mean it in the magical sense. Right. Lan is the one channeling everyone's grief.
Yes.
Because all of the other warders, they're going to stand around and they're going to beat their chests in pain. Yeah. Which when you hear about, loss, oh, what are you going to do? Beat your chest. And Lan is going to be their representative. He is going to channel all of their pain. He is the focal point for it, because they cannot afford all of them to do this every single time. They nominate one person. Right. And Lan is going to channel all of it. And we've seen that Lan has depth of emotion.
Yeah, appropriately
And
too, because he was close to Stepan as well. They seemed to be very close friends. So it was a natural choice for Lan to do that. It made sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we've seen that Lan has huge depths of emotion, but when he is in
Yeah.
public,
Yeah.
when he's out there, that's,
Yes.
you don't show that. That is potentially a weakness when you're out in the world.
Right.
But when you're surrounded by family,
Yes.
this is the only moment when you can let your guard down.
Right.
And so, like a professional mourner on the Appian Way,
Yeah.
he rends his shirt, he beats his chest,
Yeah.
he releases the rage and pain of all of them. He
Yeah.
is the focal point. And that was so well done.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, it sold me on the fact that this is a different world. This is a different ceremony and way of dealing with grief than
Yeah.
that I have in my, are these things that remind us,
Yeah.
yes, this is what we do. We gather with family
Yeah.
and we mourn. And that, the power of that performance, the fact that you have Moiraine is feeling his grief, Moiraine's grief, there's a feedback loop as everything builds and builds because they're all connected and all together.
Yeah.
And I thought it was incredibly powerful, visually very well done. And it fitted with this slightly different cultural way that people meet to grieve.
Yeah, it's so interesting because my wife is South Asian, and over there, white is the color of mourning. And unlike here, you know, in my culture, white is usually associated, if anything, with like wedding dresses and that sort of thing. But you know, for her, that's entirely fitting, you know, coming from that culture. But I totally agree with you about the power of that scene. I found it very moving. What made it work, especially I think for me, just from a storytelling perspective, was what you were starting to talk about there with Moraine's look and their exchanging of emotions. But it was the faces of everyone. It was Lan's grief, and it was other people's reactions to his grief. I'll give an example. Maybe this will help illustrate what I mean. When my grandmother passed away, I had my own grief, but I wasn't crying outwardly or anything like that at her funeral. And then we had the burial, and it was my grandfather's grief as we were at the burial that broke me. And I just couldn't hold in the tears then. It wasn't my own grief that broke me. It was my grandfather's grief and his loss. And I saw him looking so alone and so vulnerable. And that just broke me. And I couldn't hold it in at that point. And that's kind of what happened for me in this scene. It was Nynaeve looking at Lan and the power. I mean, that actor did a tremendous job in the show, just a tremendous job. I thought the actor playing Nynaeve just did a brilliant job with that. And the expression on her face, you could see she's looking at Lan and reacting to his grief. And as I said before, there might even be a little bit of guilt there because of the fact that she supplied the tea. Just so much going on that face, and it's so powerful. I just thought it was brilliant. And Moraine's more stoic face with the tear tracks coming down, brilliant. Just everything about that scene was so touching, and the thumping of the chests, the rhythm of that. You know, it's like with every thump of the chest, you feel the throb of the pain. It's obviously a made-up ritual, but I just thought it was very powerful. Yeah.
And it felt incredibly authentic. And you can imagine the next time a warder dies, something like this, they'll say they'll nominate someone else, and Lan will stand there doing the same thing. It's very weird. I saw people complaining about this, going, but Lan's meant to be stoic, and you go, he is. Yeah. But this is different. This is not Lan, you know, when he's out in the world going, oh, I miss Stepan. Stepan was my friend. You go, that's pushed. This is an incredibly intimate moment. Right. In the privacy of the warder's quarters, right. In the Aes Sedai Tar, in Tar Valon, surrounded by other warders, and he's nominated to be the one to express their grief.
Yeah.
And this is the one opportunity to let out all emotion. I thought it was fantastically done.
It was beautifully done. And just some great acting. The actor playing Lan really carried that scene beautifully. I just thought there was tremendously great acting in this episode.
I will take the the exchange between Leandra and Moraine, where they're
Uh-huh.
kind of sparring.
Yeah, in the hallway.
I said, yeah, and I had said that obviously I thought scene with Valdo, something just didn't land properly for me.
Uh-huh.
But in the scene between Leandra and Moraine, everything landed,
Yeah.
and they're just so many of the like. She reaches up and touches Moraine's face,
Yeah, what's that?
and
Yeah.
there's all of this, and you can see all of these subtle power plays about who's the more powerful in the scene, and then Moraine just having none of it and
Right.
dismissing her. But actually, the actor playing Leandra had another good scene, and when she was talking to Nynaeve,
Yeah.
and this is one of these really clever things that you can do with dialogue that is actually about characterization.
Yeah.
When Leandra talks about the warders, she says, "Oh, these warders that bonded my sisters."
Yes.
And it's how she puts the warder bonded the Aes Sedai. And you
Right.
go,
Right.
how can a warder with no magic
Yeah.
bond an Aes Sedai? And it's, you can see in that her distrust of men, her dislike
Yeah.
of the warders.
But I
That
thought
it's
go oh, so I was just gonna say that scene. You finish your thought though first.
okay, but I was just, well, you interrupted me now. Where I was in mid-flow.
Sorry.
But where she puts the emphasis on the warder bonding. So it's the warder has caged the Aes Sedai. So you can see all of that subtext running through that one line.
Yeah.
And some people say this show has bad writing. Okay, you mightn't like all of it, but there are lines like that. You go, you know what? That's incredibly well done dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much sold about her character, about her perspective and the Red Aja perspective,
Exactly.
about all of these things
Yeah.
in that. And you can see Nynaeve is again slightly uncomfortable with all of this.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a great scene because previously I thought Leandrin was just a very two-dimensional villain in this. And now that scene actually, as she was speaking to Nynaeve about how there are men in the world who, just because a woman has a little bit of power, they want to chop her hands off and kill her, and torture her. And I kind of found myself agreeing with her. I found myself feeling a bit of a connection with Leandrin in that scene. And I thought, wow, the actor carried that off really, really well. I feel like this is some good character work, this dialogue here. And I kind of get where she's coming from, actually, because you have in another scene, this sadistic, a white cloak guy who likes to chop off hands and be a bully. And so I kind of thinking maybe Leandrin has a point here, So I like that. I like the complexity we're getting with some of these scenes.
Yeah, but I'd already said that I didn't think she was two-dimensional because in the fourth episode, she'd had that thing where, yeah, I want to take away his power. We should just do this. And they're going, you're meant to stand up for law and order. I shouldn't have to remind you of that. She gets dressed down by Kareen.
Right.
And then when Kareen is dead, Moraine, you're going to burn yourself up. You're going to burn out your talent. You're pulling in too much power. And she's like, I don't care. He killed my sister. You can see how deeply personal it is to her. She wasn't two-dimensional. And we're just seeing more and more of it. She's not a cackling villain.
No.
And when we see that, the political intrigue going on with Moraine, when we see her, she go, oh, where are you hiding Nynaeve? To Moraine. And we know she's already met Nynaeve.
Yeah. Yeah.
That she's not letting on. She's already spoken to her. She already knows where she is.
Yeah.
All of these subtle power plays, you go, this is so much fun. And
it's good.
It develops the world in a way that I'm really enjoying.
Same here. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that fourth episode. I was thinking more back to the first three where you see that one opening scene where she's just almost villainous. And if she had a mustache, she would have been twirling her mustache if she had had one in that scene.
I know, but Philip, that's why we have these conversations, so I can correct you when you're wrong.
Well, I'm used to that, so that's all good. But we cannot have this conversation without talking about Loial, right? We have to talk about Loial. I liked the actor's the voice. I thought that was really great. I thought that was powerful, and that's kind of I mean, I know that they're not necessarily trying to duplicate what's going on in my head, but that was the right voice for me for that. Now, visually, uh, I didn't think it was that great. I know we did our nitpicks earlier, so but it's not that important to me personally. I didn't think it was that great visually, but I'm giving it a pass because, you know, it's probably other people might have found it convincing. I don't know how you found it, but I love the voice. I love what the actor was doing. I love the personality being conveyed. It was just wonderful to me, and how he's just so, you know, you expect a monster, and what you get is an intellectual and someone who is gentle and polite, and totally defeats. Of course, Rand whips out his sword, and he's, you know, in that when he first meets him, and Loyal just sort of smiles, and he tells this story of how he was chased out of the city the first time he came, and you like this person, this Ogier, as soon as you meet him, and that's how I felt in the books too. So I like that, but visually I thought it was just kind of not that great.
Well, and this is one of the, again, they're never going to be able to fully represent what is in your head.
Right.
And this is one of the things that I often give TV shows an absolute pass on, because he's meant to be huge. The Ogier rooms are meant to be oversized.
He seemed too short to me, but
and you go, well, okay, so how are you going to do that? Are you going to film with false perspective every single shot that he is in? Are you going to build two of every single set so you can do your false perspective shots? You've just doubled the cost of every single set that he is in. Right. So what do? You either double your costs, or you go, you know what, cut him from as many scenes as possible. It's far too expensive. You go, okay, so that's one way of doing it. And that's when you want to keep him practical, but have the correct size. Plus then you need to hire a bunch of extras or doubles for your main characters who are much shorter, that you can shoot in a lot of the shots.
Yeah.
Where you're shooting him normally. And it's what they did with Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and it's incredible. But that took a lot of very tricky camera work, a lot of good set design, and having doubles of people.
And a bigger budget. And a bigger budget.
And a bigger budget. Or they could have gone fully CGI. Because that always works out well in TV shows when there's a fully CGI character wandering around. And for all those people going, he doesn't look right, I didn't like that effect, it would have been so much better. Okay, imagine they'd done CGI, and imagine, would you have been pleased with that? No, you wouldn't have, because that wouldn't have been right, and it wouldn't have fitted either. Right. And so there has to be a balance, I think, between what is practical and pragmatic for a television show that is trying to evoke the essence of a character. Is it going to be perfect? No. But does it do the job well enough? And you go, okay, so it looks a bit strange. We'll get used to it very quickly. The more he's in the show, you go, yeah, that's kind of how it is.
The most important thing is the actor pulled it off, and I thought that was great. So with his voice, he wasn't able to make a ton of facial expressions because of whatever the prosthetics or whatever it was that was on
and him. The big bushy beard and the hair and the teeth, and you go, he's limited in what he can do with his face, but he still managed to convey a lot with his voice acting.
Absolutely.
And you go, so I know some people will be annoyed about how the Ogier look, and you know what, fair enough. It's not book accurate. Is he different enough from human that I accept him as kind of scary looking? Yeah. Is he? Has the essence of the character been communicated on screen? And I think very effectively. He is that academic, doesn't really understand human conventions, and talks about all these things, and is excited about all of the trivia of the world. He played into that so well, and I greatly enjoyed it. Although there is a very curious thing about this, which is clearly there are scenes missing. Now, it could be intentional, that, you know, Rand told, he goes, oh, I found the woman you were looking for that you told me because of the braid. And
they tried to really kind of, you know, streamline that, I guess.
And so there are clearly like sequences missing. Now, are they intentionally missing, or were they cut for runtime? ultimately it doesn't really matter. The show moved on. I still followed what was going on. I don't need to see every single moment.
Yeah.
But on Nynaeve's braid, did you notice when she was upset, she was gripping the braid,
Oh, we got a
and
braid tug, did we?
we
Oh,
we got braid tugging without it. And in my head, it was always this.
yeah.
And actually, I like the much more subtle way that she has done it. She holds
Ah,
on to it because we had that scene in episode 1. Remember when you feel alone? The
yeah.
braid was this whole symbol that you are not alone. You are part of the
That's
woman's
nice.
circle.
Yeah.
And so there have been a couple of moments now where I've noticed her grabbing the braid and holding it,
Yeah.
not tugging away on it like it's some sort of bell pull,
Yeah.
which is how it always came across in the books, and it was why it's such a running joke.
Yeah.
But that was really done. And when uh, Egwene was captured by the children, they
Hmm.
undo her braid,
Yeah.
and she is then actually sort of alone because she
Yeah.
doesn't have her braid. She's been taken out
Right.
of it.
Interesting. Nice call there. I like that, AP. Yeah, they worked that in nicely. There were a lot of subtle things in there. If you blinked, you might have missed like when Matt was sitting out on the balcony in Tar Valon, and Rand comes to join him. Very brief glimpse, but if you look closely, you see Pod and Fane down on the street level, looking up at them, and kind of giving
But
his evil grin. Did you notice him
well,
there? Because I
I
didn't see
didn't
him.
notice him there. I noticed him in an earlier scene
Interesting. Huh.
when they're coming into the inn at the beginning of their sort of, and they're talking about, oh, Tom recommended this place, and they walk down. That shot holds on the street for longer, and Padam Fian is standing in the background, and
Uh-huh.
then they actually cut to his hand moving away and the sound of whistling.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So
And
he's obviously tailing them. He's following them. Yeah.
so I didn't catch him in the dragon scene. That's actually quite cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got one and you got one, so we'll call it a draw.
I guess it's even there. No advantage. But
But the thing I liked about that is when Matt is looking at Logain, and Logain has that, he's laughing and cackling and up against the bars, and then
yeah.
it cuts to an external perspective, and you realize that's all in Matt's head.
Yeah.
That didn't happen
Yeah. And then you
because
had that.
Logain is sitting in the back and he's basically rocking and
Yeah.
not with it, and
Yeah.
therefore he didn't do any of these things. Matt conjured that. That's Matt's
That's
madness in
his
this moment.
madness taking over. Exactly. That's how I interpreted that too. And then there's a conversation with Rand. I like what they're doing with Matt and Rand as well. And Rand is concerned for his friend, especially given the conversation that he had earlier with Tom before Tom was separated from them by the Fade. And but the fact that Matt would say, "Don't let this happen to me," let's make an agreement, and meaning they don't spell it out, but that means you're going to have to, cut my throat or whatever. You're going to have to.
But
Interesting scene, I thought, but and of
um,
course you
but
see Rand, who hasn't had. It's interesting because Rand hasn't had as many moments yet as some of the other characters, but he does a
oh,
nice
I
job.
think I think they're building to big grand moments.
I would expect that. I would expect that. Yeah. But so far, interestingly, they're keeping him a little bit. I think he's having fewer of these moments to shine in the episodes, as it were. So interesting. But you wanted to say something else about that scene, I think.
Well, about that scene, and it was something that if there hadn't been a dialogue drop later on, I
Yeah.
would have listed this as a nitpick. But where the two Aes Sedai are sitting on the chairs mounted behind the cage, and everyone's pelting stuff
Oh,
at
she got a
the Dragon
turnip.
Reaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I was looking at that going, that like why are they? That's the dumbest place to sit. You think everyone's going to be a good aim? What are you doing? Oh my
Yeah.
god. They're going to end up covered in stuff because people are going to be crap at throwing things.
So the two
And of course,
warders have
later
a
on,
conversation. Yeah. Where he's like,
they
yeah,
do the joke about it.
yeah, yeah. That was good. I like that touch. And it also humanizes even more these warders who I already like. I already like these guys. And then they were having a little laugh at Leandrin's expense because the best part of it was when she was hit by the turnip. Did you see the look on her face? So
So
yeah.
one last point I wanted to raise about this episode,
Okay.
is I love the way that the warders are being set up as a direct mirror to the Children of Light.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because the Children of Light we've seen in the white cloaks and how they torture and kill Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And then we have this focus on all of the warders in this episode, all wearing white. And their job is to protect the Aes Sedai. And
Yeah.
they're an all-male order thus far.
Yeah.
And the Children of Light are an all-male order. You can see they're two halves of basically the same coin.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
because of the use of white, where the white for the warders is for mourning, but the white for the Children of Light is, oh, we're pure, but it now will always have that connotation of death, because now we know that about this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so them dressed in white is a symbol of death.
Yeah.
Whereas the warders, we've seen them, they basically all wear green, which, you know, most cultures associate, or a lot of cultures associate with growth and life and that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed that mirroring and setting them up as these different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely episode. I am even more thrilled to be watching this show now, and I'm excited for the next 3 episodes to finish out the season at this point. I did not anticipate when I watched the first 3 episodes that I was going to be this invested. So now I feel like, hey, this is, I like what they're doing. I like that they've diverged from the books in ways that I feel have helped this story on screen become more relatable. The character work that they're doing, excellent. They took the time to do some really lovely scenes. Like I said, the one without even any dialogue in it, just the look between Lan and Moiraine. Just some good stuff. You know, a lot of positives to take from this, and a lot of excitement for the future, wouldn't you say?
Oh, okay. I thought of one last tiny nitpick.
Okay.
This is one of those ones that drove me insane. The number of people who get onto a made bed without taking their boots off.
Oh yeah, that
Moiraine does
did
it.
bother me.
Matt does it.
Yeah.
Rand does it. They all get onto their bed with
why?
their filthy boots.
No, because there is no filth. There's no mud in this world.
I just, why are all of you doing this? And yet there's one person who gets on the bed with bare feet.
Who's that?
Alana. Alana has her shoes off when she's lying on Moiraine's bed and talking to her. She's the only one who has the common decency to take off her outdoor footwear before climbing on someone's bed.
Yeah, well, I have to take my shoes off as soon as I get back in the house. So, you know, they come off at the door in this place. So, yeah.
But that just, it popped into my head there as something I was seething about. It's like, stop ruining the sheets with all of the mud that's on your shoes.
But I think we can somehow learn to live with that.
But thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. I really like this episode. This episode, more than any of the others, has sold me on this, as it is it's trying to tell a really compelling story.
Yep.
Is it telling it in the same way as the books? No, but I think it's telling the same story. It's just getting there in a different way.
Yep.
And I'm actually much more intrigued by that, because if they've been following the books beat for beat,
no way.
Where would my investment be? I'd be, yeah, but I know all this. I've read all this. It's just doing the same things that I know.
Yeah.
This is doing it in a way that is new to me, but I can see how it connects to all of those elements of the underlying nature of the story being told.
Yep. And I would argue more effectively bringing new people to the story, who many of which will go on to read the books. So it's a win-win, I think. But
or listen to the audiobooks.
Or listen to the audiobooks. Yeah. So, all right, AP. Well, thank you so much. This has been a blast, as always. And I always enjoy learning from you, ducking a few fireballs, getting a few dabs here and there. So it's been a pleasure, though. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Philip. You know how much I enjoy these things. So have a great evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.